Hello and welcome to Beyond the Noise, the podcast series from PR360. I'm news editor Siobhan Holt, and this is a special edition of Beyond the Noise as we are recording live from PR360's PR360 conference in Brighton. For this live edition, I'm joined by Editor-in-Chief Danny Rogers and reporter Evie Barrett. Hello both.
Hello.
Hello.
Well, we're at the end of our two-day conference here in sunny Brighton. This year, the event has celebrated its 10th anniversary, and the conference has been really successful for PR360. We're really proud. It was a completely sold-out event. So anyway, tell me, guys, how have you found the last 2 days?
I've done a lot of PR360s over the last 10 years, although we didn't have PR360 during lockdown years. But this was the biggest one ever. And as you say, it was completely sold out. There was hundreds of people. And there was more people than we even had before lockdown. So that was quite nice to get back to kind of some sense of normality and see people in the flesh again.
Yeah, people have said to me anecdotally that they're glad that conferences are back, and they do seem to be, back in force, which is what we like.
And we even had a drinks event at this one, which, you usually have a drinks event, but this one was across the road in a nice beach bar. Yeah. And it was great to see so many communications directors, agency bosses and other people in the industry just relaxing and chatting over a drink in the evening.
Yeah, and we have to thank Porto Novelli for that lovely event. As you say, it was great watching the sun going down over the beach.
Yeah, it's my third PR360 and I have to say my favourite so far. I think there were some really insightful sessions and the audience seemed really engaged and asking some really great questions, which I think just makes it so much more enjoyable.
And also your first taken to the stage, Evie. How did you find that?
Yeah, well there's that. I actually quite enjoyed it. It was quite nice actually to be able to get involved.
It was great to have somebody a bit younger. We were talking about the influencers and the future of PR. So to have Evie there doing it rather than old git like me was
not at all, Danny.
Refreshing.
Not at all. It was a great ensemble piece, I think we can say, and we're all pretty proud.
Good team effort.
Let's chat about some of our personal highlights from the last 2 days. Evie, what stood out to you?
I think one of the standout sessions for me and probably for all of us, I guess, was having Celia Richardson from the National Trust talk. She was giving some really powerful insights, I think, where they've been in the news a lot, kind of got a lot of attention. The interesting part of that is that she herself has had a lot of attention on her as a comms person. She was talking about how she uses her personal Twitter feed to have debates kind of on behalf of the National Trust. And when asked why she does that, she sort of said because the official National Trust account has 1 million followers. And people come to that for photos of wildlife and things like that. They don't want to see these sort of raging debates. So her personal account, by contrast, is followed by MPs and journalists and things like that. So it feels more appropriate to kind of have those discussions there.
Very brave, right?
Yeah.
For a comms director to use their personal account, particularly the sort of debates that she's getting involved in, which are anti-woke or some even racism that it gets accused of. So, very brave of her to do that on her own social media.
Yeah, and I think it sort of shows as well the sort of challenges that comms bosses are facing, that you've got the main site, which, as you pointed out, you want to see pretty flowers and pictures of the National Trust houses, but taking the conversation away, but you still want to defend the organisation that you work for. So using her own platform, as you say, is very brave to do that approach.
Yeah, well, she said kind of times have changed and you can't always use the corporate voice to have these discussions anymore. She said you can't always kind of play the game that the people criticising you want you to play. Sometimes you just have to kind of step out of that corporate voice and sort of say plainly, I don't think you're right, kind of from a personal perspective, and obviously still representing the brand, but kind of having a different angle on it.
Yeah, and let's be clear, the National Trust has been a real at the heart of this anti-woke debate because they've been trying to address some issues around colonialism in their properties, and of course the right have accused them of being obsessed with a woke agenda and ignoring the real mission of the National Trust. But in that session, she said that the mission was in fact to do exactly that, to talk about these issues.
Yeah, she said we'd released documents sort of explaining how far back some of it links to colonialism and being very upfront about it. And she also said now that comms directors need to slightly accept that is part of the job. that you do have to stand up for your organisation and what you believe in, and that you may face big criticisms, and that's just part of the role.
But that you don't have to issue an apology. If you're sure, like, if you really feel that what you're doing is right, that doesn't mean kind of back down as soon as you're criticised. I think a lot of people are really fearful of criticism, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're doing anything wrong. That was the impression that I got.
Yeah, and also that you don't have to engage on every single criticism as well, which I thought was an interesting angle.
Yeah, she said that, you know, they got race baiting, as she described it, and she said that sort of stuff, you just shut it down. You don't get involved in that sort of nonsense at all, which I thought was very sensible.
Yeah, she said I don't engage at all. Yeah, absolutely.
So Celia said that the National Trust's mission statement was nature, beauty and history protected for everyone. So therefore, you know, this whole idea of they did actually have an agenda to address some of these issues. And she did say that the National Trust as such had become a great breeding ground for the culture wars. So, you know, she really has been at the heart of some tough conversations.
One of the most popular speakers, I think we can say, was our keynote speaker, which was Mattel.
Yes, I was very excited for that one in particular. We had Amarilis Whitty for Mattel, and she was actually talking about, obviously the Barbie film was a great success, but she was kind of saying that prior to that, a lot of people might not realise that the Barbie brand actually had a bit of a slump, as she put it. And she said that it was kind of facing criticism from a lot of the press for being outdated and kind of perpetuating stereotypes about body image and things like that. So the brand actually had quite a lot of work to do to turn that around before it could put this film out and make it as successful as it was. So it started a few years ago by creating a more diverse and inclusive range of dolls, including a Down syndrome Barbie and wheelchair Barbie, things like that. And Amarilis said that actually things like that were a big factor in getting big stars like Greta Gerwig and Margot Robbie to be interested in the prospect of a Barbie film. So it kind of, in a way, all started from a PR campaign.
Yeah, I think she put up one slide from The Guardian about 2015 that said Barbie is dead.
Wow.
It sort of said, you know, because it was still associated with all these damaging stereotypes of female looks. And it was a great story that they managed to turn it around from that point where people were saying it was dead to probably the phenomenon of last year, certainly last summer with the Barbie film and pink taking over our country.
Yeah, absolutely.
So many brand partnerships off the back of that as well, as I'm sure everyone...
160, I think she said. 160 different brand partnerships.
And from that, she said that the Barbie brand kind of has a halo effect now, and that a lot of other companies still want to partner with it kind of beyond the film. I mean, we recently saw Heinz launching a barbecue sauce. So I think this kind of phenomenon, while it's still not quite as big as it was last year, it's going to carry on for a while. I think the brand is going to be kind of seen in a good light by a lot of people.
Yeah, it was a great way to kick off the conference, wasn't it? It was the first session, and she asked me to wear pink, but unfortunately I didn't have any pink when I interviewed her on stage, so sorry about that.
She had a lovely pink jacket on herself, so I
Yeah,
think she was covering it. Yeah.
And the lighting was all very pink.
Yes.
Danny, you interviewed the head of comms from Tesco. What sort of insights did you learn from that?
Yes, so I talked to Christine Heffernan, who's the Group Communications Director for Tesco PLC. And in fact, we're going to record a separate podcast that plays that interview in pretty much full. But the top line was that she was talking about how Tesco has turned around its reputation in the last 10 years, mainly by focusing its communications internally. So it's got 330,000 employees around the country, and it's engaged with them in new ways, and it's now got a better reputation as a result. But we'll put that as a separate podcast.
It'll be really interesting, one to look out for, definitely. A big topic, though, at the conference was AI. I think it cropped up in pretty much every conversation that we had in some capacity. What stood out for you about the potentials and what it could do for comms?
I think it was actually quite promising in a way. I mean, a lot of the stuff we hear about AI is a lot of future gazing and kind of how is it going to steal our jobs and things like that, really negative. But actually, a lot of the way it was discussed on stage was kind of more promising. They were sort of saying, if you're not involved with AI yet, that's fine. Just kind of take it slowly and just experiment with it at first and work out how's right to use it for your business. And a lot of people who attended, who I've been speaking to, said they found that really comforting because not everyone is going to be an expert on it straight away.
Yeah, and also the idea that don't worry if you haven't started. It's not like you've missed the boat on
Yeah,
AI.
exactly.
And I think for a lot of internal comms, it can be quite scary. I think in agency, you've got a lot of people maybe that you can brainstorm, or you might have your own AI division that's now being put in place from the bigger bosses. But I think if you're in a group of 6 people, it can feel quite scary, this new technology that you're learning about and where to start. So I think that's a great message, that it's not too late, and also to start small.
Yes, I agree. In fact, this time last year when we were at PR360 in Brighton, ChatGPT was, the big topic that everybody was talking about. But back then, very few people really understood what we should be doing with AI, and there was a lot of fear around then. And it strikes me that a year on, there's much more practical, sensible advice about how we can use it as comms professionals or media professionals without being afraid of it. And some very good practical advice on the specific tools and apps that we can use.
Yeah, completely. And also the human element is not going to go. That it's going to work in partnership with AI, and it's going to help streamline a lot of services, which I think is just going to be really beneficial for PR completely.
Yeah, there was also a bit of AI myth busting. We had a session with some of our 30 under 30 people kind of unpacking future trends. And Anil Manji, who is a strategic comms consultant at the NHS, kind of said a lot of people assume that the younger you are, the better you are at using AI. And that's not the case. It's not sort of like social media where everyone's grown up with it since being a kid. We're sort of all in the same boat here. So if you're a bit older and you think, oh, AI is for the young people, that's not the case. Everyone's starting from scratch.
There was one line from one of the speakers which was, AI is not going to replace your job, but somebody is who understands AI better than you do. I thought that was really interesting, saying that it's not necessarily going to replace you unless you ignore it, and that there will be people who understand it and can use it better. So you've got to make sure that you train yourself to, fulfill its potential.
And I've heard previously as well, not even just at the conference but in comms generally, that this isn't brand new, new technology being brought in, the comms professionals that have been working in the sector for years have experienced this, and it's just getting used to it and just embracing it, and hopefully they've learnt a lot from this conference that they can take away and use.
Yeah, the message really was try it,
yeah.
right? Just try it. And the other message when you try it was talk to it as if it's a human rather than as if it was a Google search engine or something. So almost treat it as a person and you'll get the best out of any AI app.
Absolutely. Trial and error. Nothing wrong with that. We'll return to share more thoughts on PR360, but first, some quick messages.
One of the sessions today, which I thought was great, was with Caroline Fisher from ASICS. She was basically giving an overview of the work that they've done in the last few years and kind of saying that they've gone with the same brief again and again of kind of showing the mental benefits of exercise rather than just the physical benefits. But it was really cool how they kind of packaged that mission in so many different ways, kind of with different PR campaigns, saying like, you don't have to try and kind of reinvent the wheel. You can just keep at the same message, and that can sometimes be really effective.
Yeah, she gave the analogy with Dove's campaign for Real Beauty, how effectively, she said that's a sort of a steely heart to that campaign that they've used over 20, 30 years. And I think that's what they're trying to do with ASICS. I noticed they use very powerful films, don't they, in their campaigning, very emotive films, much like Campaign for Real Beauty has always done. And I think we all amazed at the growth of the ASICS brand, in that probably 10 years ago, not many people had heard of it. It was quite niche, but now it's starting to compete with the Nikes and the Adidas of the world because it's got this very distinct, as you say, Evie, consistent positioning about, was it body and mind working together?
Yeah.
And focusing not so much on elite performance, but how real people can change their mental attitudes by simply exercising more.
Yeah, it gives them a real USP. And I think, like you say, the way it's packaged in terms of kind of emotive films and that kind of thing makes it so much more powerful than if it was just kind of a press release and a photo. Like you really kind of see what they were going for with that work.
She did a presentation last year actually at PR360 on a different campaign, but again, same messaging. And I do remember getting quite emotional actually watching it. But you're right, and they're very smart at picking the right sort of brand ambassadors. They're not necessarily the big faces that we see all the time.
Well, yeah, one of the ambassadors they had was the guy who came last in the London Marathon, I think. They were saying everyone else is choosing the top performing athletes, we're going to go with this guy because your personal best doesn't have to be a record time. It's kind of how it makes you feel. If you feel better than you did before, then that's just as good.
Yeah, they got this guy interviewed on breakfast TV and all sorts of things. Amazing, isn't it? How you can get a loser in inverted commas and get more PR coverage out of that. Yeah. And talk about that powerful story rather than relying on the high-paid athlete.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about making that connection with the public that, you know, that could be me. It's playing on that sort of idea as a campaign that you're going to get more people investing in the brand. And
the other thing about ASICS is it's very integrated. So Fish, as she likes to be known, Caroline Fisher was saying that, you know, PR really leads the strategy. And they do a lot of advertising and films and all sorts of integrated work. But it's public relations that is really running that strategy, which is brilliant for this industry.
And they really rely heavily on the data when they're making them campaigns as well, which I think just makes it stronger. Another
great case study session we had was Avanti West Coast, the train operator, which Daisy Hawker-Wallace, Deputy Director and Head of PR at Avanti West Coast, talked about this campaign to get more female train drivers. Apparently only less than 10% of train drivers are women. And Avanti is desperately trying to get more female drivers in there. And she was talking about a campaign that actually featured the first ever female train driver. I think it was in the 1940s or something. And sadly, this woman is now dead. But they liaised with her family and they created a mural at Euston Station, which apparently is still there.
It is.
Yeah, you've seen it.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's an amazing story. And much like EasyJet, EasyJet, by the way, were also at PR360, and they were talking about attracting more female airline pilots. And it's interesting, isn't it, how you've got to use, you know, really powerful narratives and creativity to try and get much more diversity in these workforces.
That was part of a bigger panel where there was a couple of campaigns that were being shown, and what really stood out to me was how broad the diversity was. The campaigns weren't just, I think a lot sometimes maybe just appeal to Gen Z or trying to get a younger generation. There's nothing wrong with that, but I was really impressed with how their campaigns were appealing to women or the deaf community and how it really impacted those communities to make it much stronger. So yeah, there was a lot of campaigns that really stood out, I think, at the conference this year.
Yeah, it's a very good point. The DE&I session, you know, which has become a bit of a cliche. I thought it was fantastic because it talked very much about DEI campaigns that really worked, you know, that really moved the dial by appealing to different communities, and they were fantastic. It was BT was another example, and Heineken as well.
Yeah. They'd done a campaign where it was Jill Scott, the footballer, and Gary Neville, and they'd swapped their social media accounts to see the response. And as you can imagine, Jill was pretending to be Gary and getting told that, you know, she knows so much about football. And the other way around, Gary was getting all the hate, pretending to be Jill. So it was a very clever campaign. But yeah, shocking statistics that were shown as well. But I think just playing with those ideas are always going to be a winner. Yeah, it's been a brilliant 2-day conference. It's been great. We've all networked. We've all listened to some really insightful speakers and conferences and some brilliant campaigns. Everyone's slowly making their way back to their trains to travel back to London. All a bit tired, I think, after.
I was going to say, I think they'll all sleep well tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. But we're looking forward to next year's event. I think we'll be making it bigger and better for everyone. That's the plan.
I hope so. I'm certainly tired because I went for a run on the beach every morning, which nearly killed me. So
I'm very impressed.
Certainly looking forward to going to bed tonight.
Well, before we finish, I'd like to quickly promote the PR360 UK Awards. That's our biggest awards event of the year. Get your entries in today. And if you've enjoyed today's episode, please leave a review. And that's wherever you access your podcasts. Beyond the Noise goes live every 2 weeks. But in the meantime, you can check out our shorter news-based podcast, Noise in Brief, which comes out next week. We hope you've enjoyed this special live edition of PR360. Thanks to the team here for sharing your thoughts. We hope you will join the PR360 conference when it returns next year, and that will be in May 2025. But keep an eye out for more details on prweek.com and our daily bulletins. That's all for this episode. Thank you for listening. Bye.
Bye from Brighton.